Hi guys, this is David. This is going to be the first part of a critique on the submissions you made for the best shot assignment. I'm trying to get desperately back on track, and slowly we're catching up. I'm going to do this in two parts. There are 22 images that were submitted on time to do this. That does present a small problem since there are 40 some odd of you, so some of you didn't make it in, but we're on our way now and there's kind of no turning back. So here we'll go, getting ready for this first one. So here's the first shot. By the way, these are in no particular order except potentially by however I filed them, last name, however I wrote it down quickly to save them. This shot is an interesting shot, but it's got several major problems. Number one, it's really difficult to tell what the subject is. As a general rule, if you've got shots where much of it is out of focus, whatever is in focus is going to become almost by default is going to become the place people look. Our problem with this one is there isn't anything really in focus. The closest thing to being sharp is here on this building. So unless the story here is that this person is casing this building for some reason, it's hard to make sense of what this is about. The car is out of focus. The individual is out of focus. The trees are out of focus. Everything is out of focus, but it's not so much focus, I think, as it is camera shake. So I'm assuming this was in low light, approaching night, based on the lights on the buildings, and you just had too long a shutter speed for hand holding this, and so it all is just kind of blurred. So just remember, find something that's going to be your topic, your main element, and at least make that sharp or steady. So when you have long exposures, go on a tripod. Brace yourself against, in this case, maybe against a street sign. Anything that's going to let it be sharp. Okay, on to the next one. Well, here's an interesting shot of really interesting looking cat. Looks like something out of Egyptian mythology. Maybe Bast or Bastet, the cat god. It's a nice shot of the cat. The composition is working against you a little bit. What would help it is to take advantage of a couple of the major leading lines. For example, this stare is so powerful. Whenever we have a person or an animal doing that, it creates this long, strong movement going in this direction. The tail adds to it. The lines on the couch add to it. So I would suggest you go one of two ways. My preference, I think, would be to just let the shot move that way, and I would crop it probably like this. So now we've given a little more dynamic movement to the shot. We've really emphasized the leading lines that are already there. I think that would be my best guess. I started initially to think maybe this would also work as a vertical, and it might, but I'm not sure of that. If we break some of that directional line by cropping into the tail, come in a little closer, we might make an interesting shot there. I think generally the first one is a little better. The exposure is good. This is just one to solve by zeroing in on the important parts. If we did do that, however, I think we can make it a little bit better by vignetting these corners so that, again, we've now got the movement working. Let's see if we can use some tonality. So here's a really easy way to do this. I'm going to make a duplicate layer by dragging this down onto the new layer icon. And on this, I'm going to make this a multiply layer. What this is going to do is to darken everything by about 1 stop's exposure worth. Okay? Now, when we are using layers in Photoshop, what's happening is we're seeing the bottom layer as it is being worked on by whatever the top layer is doing. In this case, I'm going to create a layer mask and just apply part of this top layer. So this icon down here is the layer mask icon. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, or the Option key if you're using a Mac. Click on this. Now we're back to the original, and we have this icon over here, this black icon. If we paint on this with a white brush, the opposite color of this icon, then we'll see that darker part of the shot come. So I'm going to come over here. I can change this one of two ways. I can either click on this double arrow, and that will change back and forth between these two colors. Or I could simply use the X key on the keyboard to change it. I'm pressing it now back and forth. So I want the white brush. I'm going to come over and pick up a brush tool. And I want this brush to be very soft. So this hardness layer, or setting rather, I'm going to make very soft. The size is, it's okay. If I want to change the size, I can do it with the bracket keys. Those are the keys directly right of the P key. And by using the left bracket, I can make the brush smaller. Using the right bracket, I can make it bigger. The bigger I make it, the softer the edge will be. 100% is going to be a little much. I generally, if I'm doing this kind of thing, will start with a light amount of effect and build it if I need to. So there we have just a slight vignette. Now the general question that comes up first is, why didn't I simply burn this down? And the reason is, we certainly have the burning and dodging tools, but the problem with them is, in a color shot, particularly one where you've got kind of a neutral background, they can really screw up the color. So this approach allows us to do it without messing with the color. Simply make them darker. So over here on the icon, you can see where the white brush was. What's black was the original. What is white was the darkened area. So let's take a quick look back and forth. There was our original. And now we've really emphasized that cat a little more. Okay, let's do the next one. Okay, here we have a nice architectural shot. You've really picked up on the angles and the lines, the graphic nature of it. But where's the shot? Every time you take a shot like this, or any shot for that matter, ask yourself, where's the photograph? Where is the focal point? Where is the major part of my shot, the major element, the major storytelling? If you want to think of this in literary terms, what's my leading sentence that's going to get me into this? Well, for me, the main area of this shot is in here, where these buildings all converge, where all of these lines converge as they come together from this angle. Now, once you've decided that, then ask yourself, what is everything else, every other major element doing? Well, we have a couple of rules here. Number one, lighter elements tend to attract the eye more than darker elements. Any other element beyond the primary element should be there only to support the major element. So in this case, we've got a lot of very bright sky. The real estate given over to the sky is almost a third, maybe a little more, of the whole shot. If this is the main thing, if the sky were the primary shot, fine, we need more of it. But it's not, at least not to me. So let's see if we can get rid of some of it. Now you notice in Photoshop, it's giving us this, by default, this rule of thirds breakdown. This little element's kind of a problem. This is taking us away from it. Anytime you've got little edge elements, the edge of your shot is really important, because that's where you've got material that can very likely take your eye away from, just because it's like, ooh, what's that? What's that little thing there in the corner? So let's get rid of some of that. Crop it down. Now we're a little better off. What would be nice, and as we get further into the course, you may want to revisit this shot and approach this almost as an exposure blend. I think if you deal a little more with the sky, bring it down, and we'll be talking about how to mask off things like this and how to make that work a little later. As we do that, you might be able to put some detail in the sky and either use it as a contrast with these soft clouds against the hard lines of the building, or at least make it a little less distracting by making it a little darker. Okay, let's move on. Okay, here we have a nice little flower shot, a macro shot of the flowers. The exposure is just, very little, maybe a half to a quarter stop too bright. We could bring that down in Camera Raw. We've also potentially, and this is only potentially, I'm going to explore this, have a problem with the yellow being a little oversaturated on it. So let's try the exposure first. That may do it. Remember the material I gave you on the approaches to this, so let's go to levels. See how we are. Well, this is looking pretty good. Your highlights are good. That would be up in these areas. That's very good. Our mid-range is just a little hot. If we bring that down some, we can now put a little more detail in there. Let me show you another way to do this. I'm going to cancel out of this. For those of you who have had the Photo 100 class, I'm making the assumption that they talked about the characteristic curve of film. Well, the characteristic curve of film is almost always an S, a shallow S curve. In this case, this is digital. This is linear. If I click on here, holding down the Alt key, I've now made this into a 10-step curve with my middle gray right in the middle. When we use this curve dialog, here's the way to think about it. The stuff on the bottom across this axis is what we have, the input. What happens on this y-axis is what we want it to do. So, for example, it starts out where we are. They're equal because we haven't done anything. But if I grab middle gray, click on it, and pull it down, I can bring down those middle tones. But I've done it without moving these upper tones. Now, if I would like to put more of a film curve, I can grab this, bring it back up just a little. Bring the shadow part down just a little. And now by using the preview button, you can see what we did. It's not a lot, but it can really improve how that shot looks. And then what I would do is consider again, where's my shot? I think it's right in here, right in this central area. There may actually be a couple of photographs in here. And here's a nice one where we have some buds opening up, some more completed buds going on. We might be able to make this better simply by cropping or with some vignetting. So let's try this. Let's start with a slight crop. I think actually I've got such a really strong leading line with these two leaves that this could stand not being a horizontal. And then I'm going to do our old vignette trick, but I'm going to do it a different way this time so you can see an option. I am going to come down, make a duplicate layer. I'm going to make this layer mode multiply. This time I'm going to make another layer mask, but I am not holding down the Alt key. I'm just clicking on the layer mask tool. Now, nothing happened in the shot, but you can see we have a white icon, not a black one like before. So if I come over here and pick a black brush, now when I paint in black, I'm going to see through to that original. So if I come in here and lighten up this original part a little bit, you can see over in the icon what's happened. The black part, I'm looking through to the original. The white part is the darkened area. Now, what's very cool about layer masks and about layers generally, if I duplicate a layer, I'm going to duplicate everything that has been done to that layer. So if I want to increase this effect, I can grab this layer, pull it down to make a duplicate of it, and it increased the effect. There was the first layer, there's the second layer, there was my original. First layer, second layer. And if this darken this part a little too much, I can come over here where it says opacity and lighten the effect of this layer a little bit. So with this, I've got an enormous amount of control as to what I can do with this. Okay, let's move on. What a cute little guy. Great cheek. Looks like Burnside's, the Civil War general who had these giant cheek sideburns. His name was Burnside, and it's from him that we get the word sideburns because of his rather bizarre way of trimming his facial hair. Here we have a situation very similar to the cat in that we've got a strong leading line implied by the way he's looking. Here's our shot in this little animal's face. All of the rest of this is nothing. It's just taking away. Let's concentrate on this very cool face. I think we can do this very simply by cropping in on him. We don't need all of his hair. We just need enough to know that that hair is standing up. I'm going to put his eyes, in this case, more or less centered, and I'm going to put one of them right along this thirds line. And I think I could even come in a little closer with this. This might have made a really interesting vertical, but I'm going to make it into a square. Now, this face is what we're talking about. What I would like to do is bring this hair highlight down, and maybe on the muzzle on his face. So I'm going to bring the whole thing down a little. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to make a multiply layer. And I'm going to drop the opacity quite a bit. Maybe halfway. Then I'll make my layer mask. Got my black brush. And I'll lighten that center part of his face back up. Now here's the cool thing about using a layer mask. I've gone a little too far here. So if I switch back to a white brush, I can darken that back up a little. You can see over here where that's happened. If I tried to do this by simply erasing through that top multiply layer, and I wanted to go back, I'd have to go all the way back using undo steps, undo it all, and then precisely add what I want. By using the layer mask, I can come through and do things selectively. I want to make one more little correction because it's, to me, something that's taking my eye off of the main shot. And that's get rid of this hair. It's so bright. It's really shining in this backlight, side light. I want to get rid of it. The simplest way to do it is to come over here to this healing group. And we want the spot healing brush. I'm going to make a small brush, and I'm simply going to paint over this white hair. The first thing I have to do is flatten this layer. Now I've got a single layer, I've got the picture. I paint on that, and look at that, it is gone. If I thought I wanted to do the same with this little wild chin hair, I can do that. Want to get rid of little spots, little dust spots on it, or little distracting highlights. This is the way, and it's very fast, very clever. It's magic. Okay, on to the next one. Well, here we have a really interesting concept that went halfway and stopped there. So here's our question. Is this a shot about a reflection in a glass that just happens to have the lady's reflection? Or is it a concept portrait to put her in this surreal area, in which case the shot is about her and the reflection is just helping to make this clever statement? Our problem is, because it's kind of half one, half another, it really doesn't let us go in either of those directions. It's a cool concept, but you need to work it out. And before you start, go beyond simply thinking this is neat and try to decide, what is it? Is it a reflection with a girl in it? Is it a portrait of the girl as a reflection in the window? Things will work out a whole lot better for you in that case. So I've got nothing I can do right here for this except to move on. But here we have more of a real portrait. Because of the pose, because of the way her arm is coming this way, it really makes it look like a selfie, which I'm assuming, since a male student shot it, it isn't. Is that a good assumption? Well, if it is, then again, where is our picture? Our picture is right here. What is this doing for it? Nothing. It's distracting. What is this doing for it? Nothing. It's distracting. So let's, first of all, take advantage of the fact that this is a really strong vertical and make it that way. Here's a clue for some of you. You are allowed to turn your camera sideways. Nothing will fall out. I know that's sometimes hard to believe. And where within this shot is our shot? It's here. It's in these dark, compelling eyes. So let's move in. Now what should have happened, of course, is that the shot itself should have moved in on these. There's where your shot is, right in there. So all of the rest of it either distracts from or simply dilutes the power of this shot, which is in her eyes. So move in on these things. Don't stand back, and just because you see it in the middle of the camera where the focus part is, maybe you have a little focus bracket, or if it was a rangefinder, you might have a little microprism. So many people think that's where the picture is, but it's not. The picture is the whole frame. So move in on it. Move in. This is a really nice shot of her. Really pensive type of shot. Okay, let's move on. Well, here we have an interesting sunset shot. Ideally, this would have been a shot for an exposure blend. Now that's a problem because you've got boats probably moving a little in the water. So you would have to shoot that blend very fast. But some cameras will do it. You can set it to bracket shots quickly. But our problem is we're blowing out stuff right here. We've got a nice area here. The sky is cool. I don't know that we can bring this down without muddying it up. I'm going to give it a quick try though. And I'm going to do it by going back to the Camera Raw filter. Now you may well have been able to do all of this in the ACR, doing it from the original RAW. You have so much more control there than I will have over this compressed JPEG. But I want to see if we can get something. A little bit, not much. Now if I bring this contrast down, nah, it just muddies it up. This is something that would have to be done in the original. But even so, we're a little more detail there. See the difference between it being totally blown out and what we've done. So this is a very tough exposure situation. Don't underestimate how hard this is to shoot and shoot well. The ideal solution would be a graduated neutral density filter that cut down the brightness of this top part of the shot. Without that, it's almost got to be done in 2 frames. So what I do, this is a cool thing, if you can find it again, go back and do it again and see if we can make it better. Good idea, great concept. Difficult to pull off. Well, here's another interesting concept. The little boy in the fountain. But it's very similar to that shot of the girl in the reflection. What really is our story? Is it about the fountain that just has a kid running through it? Or is it about the kid who happens to be in the fountain? That may sound, when you first hear it, like the same thing, just expressed differently, but it isn't. It's 2 very different shots. So when you are taking them, you need to decide which is the shot. Maybe it's 2 shots. One of a fountain with kids playing in it, the other a portrait of the little soaked-to-the-skin kid who happens to be in a fountain. This has split this into multiple areas, multiple topics. It's a good idea. It could be a really fun shot, but you need to get in and decide what it really is all about. So let's go on. Well, it looks like we have some kind of event at the beach going on here. Once again, what is your subject? What's the real subject of this? My guess is the real subject is here. It's whatever is going on right here. Is it this out of focus bush that is taking up almost a third of the landscape on your picture? I'll bet not. I'll bet it's down here. If you want to show context to the shot, be clever with framing, fine, but this amount would do it. And this out of focus area is going to be a problem. Your eye is going to be drawn to several things. Number one, it's going to be drawn to lighter areas. So we've got all these little hot spots here that's going to have your eye dancing all over it. But it's also going to be drawn to areas that are different from the primary part. Well, most of this picture is really nice and sharp, except here. So even though you can't really see it, and what happens is the brain is going to be repelled by an out-of-focus area, the counter to that is you're going to keep coming back to it because it's different. And your brain is trying to resolve, what is this different thing? So ideally, this might have been a little better if you could have moved just slightly to the right or been forced to crop it a little better with something maybe like this. If we absolutely must get some of this, okay, fine. What can I say? Get some of it. But at least it isn't quite as distracting here as it was. Okay, really be careful. You have got to pay attention to every single thing in your frame, because it's all going to show up in the final picture, and people are going to react to it whether or not you intended that or not. It's going to have an effect. So unfortunately, all you can do is live with it. Okay, let's go on. Well, this is a real nice shot of this flower in the flower garden. Again, where's our shot? It's right here. So what all is this doing for us? Well, it's providing an environment of sorts, but it's also kind of interesting with this leaf, so it's taking our mind away from it. So let's get rid of it. Let's bring this down to where our real shot is right there. Can we get rid of some of these leaves? Of course. We know what they look like. This one's going out of focus anyway, so is this. The real issue is this stem with the pestle, the stamens in here. Now, we can have a much better ability to concentrate on the real shot. And then I would darken these areas just a little. This already has a nice use of depth of field. Let's push it a little with a vignette. Remember how we do that? We make a duplicate layer. We go to multiply. I'm going to do it the way we did the original with a reversed mask, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key, click on this, click on the layer mask icon, use a white brush. I'm going to up the opacity just a hair. And I'm going to tone all this down a little, just as if I were burning and dodging it. So that we're really looking at that flower. And now, I'm going to flatten this. Now I've got this little, I don't know what this is. I may be looking through to something lighter. It may be a dead leaf. I don't know. So I'm going to fix it. I'm going to come here and I'm going to make it another leaf. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool and I'm going to pick up on this green, this darker green right here. And I'm going to make that my foreground color. Then I'm going to go to a brush and I'm going to tell that brush to darken. And what that's going to do is force the brush only to paint on the color of the brush or something lighter. So I can tone that down with a natural color that's there. I can also do the same thing right here. Okay. Cool. Okay, that's half of the projects turned in. So I'm going to end this one and get it up online, and then we'll do the second half of this. So stand by. It'll all be coming. See you in a bit.